Within that place between voids, TARDIS resided. The intertransdimensional Type 0 augmentation former existential harvester craft encompassed by a perfect vacuum contrast as an infinite expanse of dark gray. The craft slowly began to animate. Corridors filled the volume between the ship's bridge and its long-term crew hibernation chambers. Once the craft interior was manifested to such a degree that it could be navigated by its inhabitants. Within the infinite expanse, augmentation support systems manifested an interior with both form and function, interconnecting crew quarters, cargo, and vital systems after the craft came to life. The TARDIS was a craft like no other. Upon its foundation was a sandstone temple. At the center of this temple, where you would expect to find a courtyard, a large floating volumetric oval could be found. Translucent, comprised of monochromatic contrasts of white and black, having a cloud or nebulous appearance and texture, directly exposed to a featureless environment, as there were no ceilings. This courtyard was empty of sentient sapients, only sandstone pillars separated by large portals. A transcendent corridor surrounded the courtyard-like structure. Various transcendent portals lined the walls of the transcendent corridor leading to other areas within the TARDIS. While walls were present, no ceiling was visible. While in the transcendent corridor, you could visually see out into the courtyard. The opposite wall of the corridor also had windows that allowed you to see into other areas of the TARDIS. As you traversed around the primary bridge of the TARDIS, walking in a clockwise direction meant that you were moving toward the bridge of the TARDIS, and volumetric presence within the courtyard would appear to get larger. While walking in a counterclockwise direction, you were moving away from the bridge of the TARDIS, making your way out of the TARDIS toward the exit. Looking onward to the courtyard, the volumetric presence would appear to get smaller until it's no longer visible to your perception. Two families of biped humanoid sentient sapient entities would slowly animate, wearing only moderate underwear and an optional t-shirt for some of the female members of the crew. The intertransdimensional primordial natives crew members of the TARDIS began to return to the material realm, encompassed by the Ex Nihilo. Normally, all families and their members would be simultaneously awakened. Crew quarters separated members of the TARDIS by their marital and blood relationship. Throughout the TARDIS, within each crew quarter, cryopods would have their sleep cycles interrupted as they began to open. The APEC extended family, current owner-operators, and permanent residents, accompanied by the Montoon's immediate family. Neat Seti Epep commanded great respect as a primordial matriarch of the APEC pantheon, embodying all the roles of a mother, grandmother, godmother, mother-in-law, stepmother, and foster mother. Kumhu Epep was first to regain his sense of awareness, sitting upright as his mind fought off unconsciousness, followed shortly by Neat Epep, his wife. Her sense of self came slowly as well, sitting within the cryo chamber, sleep pod, legs crossed. In a state of half sleep, she stretched and groomed in a primordial manner as her facilities slowly returned to her complete control. A hand placed on her back from her husband, Kunhu Apep, who was already actively moving about the cryo chamber, brought a smile to her face as the other members of their family began to move and animate. Seti Santu Mantun is a primordial omniverse broker. Seti was first wife of Kunhu Apep, present-day husband to Neat Apep. Following Seti's separation from Kumho, after bearing him two children, Hek Apet and Anak Apet, Seti Mantun and her husband, Mintu Manju Mantun, are guests on board the TARDIS. Despite dimensionality, base was not at a premium. A primordial omniverse broker deals in real estate, buying and selling property. However, in the context of the Mother Goddess system, this business venture embodied the wholesale logistics of trading, the quintessential fabric, so to speak, of the ontological dimensionality, to include the liquidity trade of omniverses, multiverses, existences, universes, and verses. To a limited degree, Seti Mantun was also a primordial existential broker as well, whereas a primordial existential harvester would harvest for refinement to existential. A primordial existential broker would invest claim into the existential. One or more natives could invest in the same omniverse, feeding their immortality from its continued existence. The danger of overextending oneself was very much a possibility and remained a continued concern. To address this concern, Seti Mantu was left without options and turned to her first husband, Kunhu Apep, for help in this regard. Her family was put in the position of having to ask an existential harvester for their aid, a very humbling experience to say the least. Her large almond eyes slowly opened. The infinite abyss of undefined dark greenness loomed above her in an overwhelming way. Her peripheral vision was blocked by the side of the cryo chamber, looming over her in a towering manner. She could hear members of her family as they awakened. Her hand made its way, fingers extended to the base of her neck and rested on her chest as she slowly breathed. Seti Mantun lifted herself out of the cryo chamber, sitting upright, taking in her surroundings. Her husband Mantun had already fully risen and began getting dressed. Her presence brought a smile to his current wife's face. "Why are the elders, children, and grandchildren still asleep?" Seti questioned. Her body language expressed the discomfort associated with a good night's sleep. Not sure, perhaps APET don't believe in standard operation procedures. Mentu Manju Mantu replied,